to 7B, request by Mr. and Mrs. Flagg for an extension on their non-compliance property at Arrow Ridge Road. Is Mr. or Mrs. Flagg here tonight? Good evening. For the record, the town board adopted a policy and procedures for dealing with non-compliant properties. There hadn't been one in the town previously. The town board doesn't take any actions until there is a complaint made by somebody in the town on any of those properties. And once there is a complaint made, we have a very specific procedure and policy to follow. And we are tasked with following our code. There are numerous codes in the town that apply to, for instance, unlicensed vehicles or outbuildings that don't meet the requirements or match the existing structures, vehicles laying out, oversized trailers. There's a multitude of them. And we are tasked with following the town code, and that's exactly what we're doing. Attorney Macy, did you have?
Well, there was some information presented at the public comments, and it's always good to get public comments. But I don't know if the presenter had an old copy of the policy but so I want to clarify a couple of things. One is there are no longer, if there was unanimous or anonymous complaints allowed in the past. Sorry, you have to be up there for all of this. I apologize. Okay, first I want to step back. One of the first staff meetings that I went to approximately a year ago, I said, can I see a copy of the compliance procedure? Now, Kathy was brand new, I was brand new, or at least the first one she was at. And so if there was a code compliance policy and procedures in the past, we couldn't find it. And so she went out and she researched them, brought you in samples. It was my recommendation that we have a code compliant procedure and policies because everybody should be treated the same. We shouldn't have favoritism, it should be, a straightforward process for code compliance. This new policy, as was amended at the last meeting, requires that there be a written complaint, okay? And not only that, you have extra steps after the written complaint. And when we say, and as one of the supervisors read, the first paragraph, if a town board member makes the complaint because someone is, and this is when it usually comes up, they're afraid of their neighbor. So they're afraid of retaliation, so they come to you. Still have to go and inspect it. You have to find that there's a complaint. So it's not anonymous, it's just you're the complainant. You're doing it as part of your public elected duties that you're willing to be the complainant because someone has come to you and for whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable writing. So there will be no anonymous complaints. You can't say that I signed it on behalf of somebody anonymously. You are the complainant. I just want to make sure you understand that. And so there is no anonymous complaint under this policy. Secondly, I was very concerned under the first draft that we couldn't deal with seasonal issues. And the way it was presented at the public comment is correct. That's the way it used to read. So at your last meeting, I wasn't here, Kathy, your clerk, came in with several recommended changes that we had worked out at the staff meeting to clarify certain things. And one of them was exactly that. The old policy said you only had 30 days to fix it. That isn't reasonable in the middle of winter to paint a house. This is Wisconsin, for God's sake. So you corrected that in number 4. And the board has they've got to still treat everybody the same. They still got to have them come in and within the 30 days, and they still, because that's part of the policy. If they don't come in, and you came in, not picking on you, and that's good, and she came in timely, and so no citation would be issued until this is resolved now. And so you can grant whatever you think is a reasonable time. You could say, we'll review it again in 90 days, come on back. You have total carte blanche, no ticket issues, no one is quote picked on or anything. Everybody's treated the same under the policy, and you listen to what she has to say, and you decide whether her request is reasonable or not. You decide if additional time should be given. This is to keep it out of the courts, because once the citation is issued, then your hands are tied. Then it's up to the judge and up to the prosecutor and things like that. So I just wanted to spend a second clarifying. If anybody wants to blame anybody that there's a code compliance policy, please blame me. Because I want everybody to be treated fairly, I wanted everybody to be treated the same, and I wanted everybody to be following under the same rules. And you may have had a policy before, I just couldn't find it.
Yes, we did.
No. But this is the policy now. You were all given a copy. Thank you for sharing your copy with me. I feel pretty strong about this.
I
I was a prosecutor for 10 years, and I don't like people coming into court and saying, I'm being treated differently than my neighbor. I think everybody should be treated the same, so.
You're on.
We are asking for, I think you guys have a copy of the inspection report. We have removed the ice fishing shanty. It actually was in the process of being removed. That's why it was out in our property. Now it's hopefully going to stay on ice for a while. But we found out, very surprisingly, that our barn that is 53 years old is not in compliance. It is under 20 feet from our property line, which we bought the house, it was obviously there. Being January, we're just asking that we could have a reasonable amount of time to remove the barn. There were other citations listed in here, but obviously we're not going to paint the barn if we have to move the barn. So we have to tear it down, and we're fine with that. But doing it in January, even actually, we were hoping to get an extension to June 30th because our problem is that our property is extremely wet in the spring. So getting to the barn, getting everything out of the barn, there is electrical and water in this barn that we have to deal with also. So we're just asking for an extension to June 30th, where the weather would be cooperative and we can get the electrical, water, and the barn taken down. We may even actually have to take a tree down to get it down too, so it's not just an easy task to remove this barn. It's been there for quite some time. That's it. I mean, we have no problem with removing it. It isn't in compliance and we understand that, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion so we can hopefully continue to discuss this. I would move to grant the request of Mr. and Mrs. Flagg for an extension on their non-compliance issues until June 30th of 2015. I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I want to remind everybody that you have the right to come back between now and then. This is the date. The officers would be required to issue a citation if it's not done, so he's granted you, I believe, an additional 30 days over what you've asked for. Did I hear that correctly?
I asked for June 30th and he said June 30th.
Okay.
So we don't have to come back, obviously, until.
You don't have to come back at all if it's down June 30th.
Awesome.
I just want you to be surprised on July 1st. And the reason I'm stopping is I'm not going to be here every time. Sometimes boards always adjourn it to like the second meeting in June. This is nothing wrong with this motion, it's what you've requested and that's fine. But you can come back between now and then if you run into problems, and we recommend you do. You contact the clerk to be in
Oh,
here for a
definitely.
June meeting. If you run into problems and you need additional.
This isn't
I'm not going to
override.
say they can grant it,
Right,
that's
we
the
don't have
policy decision.
one problem.
But I don't want her to think that, you know, because we don't want tickets to be given out if people are cooperating.
I don't want a ticket if I don't have to have one, so thank
If
you.
people are cooperating, that's the goal, right? Is to get properties into compliance.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion?
I've got a question. With our new codes now, like this barn was built such a long time ago, how are we making our inspections and requiring people to bring it up to our codes now when it's this age of a building? Because if we do that, half our town's gonna be out of compliance.
What's your question?
Well, I think that's addressed in the letter here from the inspector. It says the large storage shed is in need of paint and re-siding, the garage door is missing and it's located approximately 13 to 15 feet from the south lot line. Accessory building structures are required to be located a minimum of 20 feet from the property line. This requirement has been in place since 1948. If you can provide proof that the shed was built prior to that date, or if the shed has received a variance from the town approving this location, please forward that to my attention. And as I understand your discussion, this is the shed that you're just gonna take down.
We're just gonna take it down.
Okay.
It never had a garage door, it's a barn.
I think what the inspector
So a
was
lot
saying
of the
that,
things were not, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there
no, I
wasn't a-
understand.
But it's gotta be moved, so everything else that he said had to be done
Sure.
is pretty null and void because of the last thing.
but I think as it pertains to Supervisor Wolf's question, because I think what the inspector was saying here is this is not a new code compliance, and in fact, like if we would have put this in place in 2013, obviously the shed was built before that, and so it wouldn't be held accountable for that. But what he's saying is that this requirement has been in place since 1948, and if they could provide documentation that it was built before that, then they wouldn't be held accountable for it. That's how I read it anyway.
Well, even more than that, if they can provide proof that it was built legally, they could have gotten a variance, there's all kind, the codes could have changed even since 48. That wasn't the complaint. The complaint wasn't that it's too close to the lot line. That's just a fact. The complaint was it's unsightly.
Oh, I thought part of the complaint was that it was too close to, because it's in the complaint form, so I thought that was part of the complaint.
Well, the complaint is the second page of the packet from the,
Okay, from the
automotive.
right.
And he just says, these three standalone buildings that bother my view, is it okay with local laws? So, there was not a finding that the building per se is illegal. So, to answer your question, and I think it's the same thing.
May I ask a question? If there's 3 buildings, which one else am I not in compliance with? Because I've only got the ice fishing shanty and the barn.
Well,
The other one was fine then? Is that what I'm to believe? If you just said there were 3 buildings that were unsightly in my property?
I don't have the whole file.
Okay.
Maybe the clerk can answer that question.
I just
but
want to
yes,
make
I
sure,
would-
I just want to make sure that he's not going to come back again, and I'm going to have to come back in 30
Reading
days
this letter, he
with
only
something else
raised
on my
this
property.
issue, so the third one he must have found was compliant.
Okay.
I think that's a reasonable reading, but we certainly recommend you ask him that question, unless the Madam Clerk knows the answer. Because we were,
I'm thinking that it was.
I have a playhouse on my property, I have 3
Well,
children.
he references an ice shack, a garden shack, and a tractor shed. So the ice shanty's gone, so that's a non-issue.
Yeah, that was actually in the process of being moved, we had,
And then the garden shack
I
or
don't know
the
what a
tractor
garden
shed?
shack is.
Okay.
I have a playhouse,
Maybe that's a garden shack.
it's painted just like my house, it's a really nice garden.
The inspector did not mention the.
Nothing else? Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not gonna end up back here in 30 more days going, do I have to keep my kids' playhouse down because, so, all right.
Anything further?
Thanks for your patience.
No problem.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.